Asustek ROG Zephyrus G14 comment. The price is no longer appropriate. Well, I'll be damned. Asus did it. It fixed literally every problem I've ever had with the Zephyrus G14. It added a webcam. It made the screen taller. It made the screen brighter and the touchpad way bigger. When it comes to the features and chassis, I'm basically out of complaints. But in doing so, Asus has added another major issue. Price. The reason the G14 shook up the laptop world when it was first released in 2020 wasn't just its excellent chassis and frame rates, it was the unbelievably low price that chassis and power were available for. The 2021 model we reviewed, also the top configuration, was $500 more expensive, and this 2022 iteration is yet another step up in price. This system, which has an AMD Ryzen 9 6900HS, a Radeon RX 6800S, 32GB of RAM, 1TB of storage, a 120Hz 2560x1600 display, and an animated LED matrix on the lid, will go for $2,499.99. That puts this G14 model very far outside the budget range it previously occupied. It's now significantly more expensive than other top 14-inch rigs. It's in the same price tier as Razer's Blade 15 Advanced, which is already considered pricey. While the G14 remains my favorite 14-inch laptop to use, it's now in a position where you can get better performance for less. Quick note, my test unit appears, from the information Asus sent me, to be the most expensive one that will be available. It looks like another configuration with the same processor and display, but an RX 6700S will also be sold for $1,599.99. I wouldn't be surprised if that one is a much better deal, and I wish I had it on hand. But this $2,499 SKU is the one Asus sent me, so it's the one I'm going to review. Our review of Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 Verge score 7 out of 10. Good stuff. Bright QHD 1610 screen, massive touchpad, best-in-class RGB keyboard, surprisingly good webcam. Bad stuff, unfortunately expensive, not outperforming cheaper system. Battery life is getting worse. I will never stop recommending this keyboard. So how did this thing do? While performance will always vary by title and other conditions, I'd roughly put this Radeon RX 6800S system somewhere between what we've seen from the RTX 3060 and the RTX 3070. The G14 averaged 202 frames per second on CS GO at maximum settings and native QHD resolution. That CPU-heavy title was the only one to take full advantage of the 120Hz display. The 6900HS processor here displayed an incremental but not significant improvement over the 5900HS that was in the 2021 G14 and the G15. The Ryzen chip looks to be doing its job, but when it came to titles that lean more on the Radeon GPU, results were murkier. On Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the G14 delivered 70 frames per second with ray tracing off and just 37 frames per second with ray tracing maxed. This is very close to what we saw from the Intel-based RTX 3060 Zephyrus M16, but both the RTX 3070 G15 and the RTX 3070 Razer Blade 14 did a much better job on this title, especially when ray tracing was in the mix. We saw similar results from Red Dead Redemption 2. The G14 averaged 49 frames per second on this title with all sliders manually maxed, which is a very respectable score that's a bit better than what we saw from the RTX 3060 M16, but still worse than what we saw from the two RTX 3070 system. These frame rates would be phenomenal from a device that costs $1,599. Another reason that lower tier model will be a great deal if its performance even comes close to what we're seeing here, but they're not blowing away the competitive field that exists in $2,499 land. For example, the RTX 3070 G15 is currently just $1,849.99 at Best Buy. The Blade 14 with that GPU is going for $2,199.99. The major benefits you get from the G14, apart from the fancy lights on the lid, are the 32GB of RAM and the 1610 screen. Those things are nice bonuses that I think are worth paying a bit more to get, but not $650 more. Little logo hidden in the vent. Cooling didn't seem to be a hugely limiting factor. Like previous Zephyrus, this G14 uses ROG's intelligent cooling system. Asus says the vapor chamber covers 50% more motherboard area than a traditional heat pipe design. The G14's processor, unsurprisingly, got hotter than the larger G15s did in our testing, but it did stay largely in the high 80s without spending a lot of time at concerning levels. Fans were audible during gameplay but easily faded into the background. I used the silent fan profile outside of gaming and never heard the fans even with my ear to the deck. The chassis was cold most of the time, even when I was running a fairly heavy workload. Fans were audible during gameplay, but easily faded into the background. Battery life remains an area where the G14 stands out, but I'm not quite as impressed as I have been in previous years. I averaged 7 hours and 50 minutes of continuous work. The test involved using the device as my daily work driver, hopping around a dozen Chrome tabs with occasional slacking, video calls, and Spotify streaming over top, with the screen around 200 nits of brightness. That's not as long as I got from last year's G14 or from the G15. Nearly 8 hours of use is still a lot better than many gaming laptops out there and close to a full workday. But exceptional battery life has been a big part of the G14's value so far, and this result chips away at that advantage. Gaming while on battery was also a bit disappointing. I got 54 minutes of Red Dead Redemption 2 play, with about 46 minutes of very playable time before everything slowed down. That's, again, not terrible but still below what we've seen from recent AMD systems. During light Chrome use, the beefy 240W charger got the G14 to 60% in 41 minutes. Power port, HDMI, USB-C, and audio jack on the left. 2 USB-A, a USB-C, and a micro SD on the right. Let's dive into the rest of the chassis. If you've read my laptop reviews before, you'll know I often look very hard for things to complain about, but I really have no complaints about the G14. The one thing to note is that Asus seems to have quietly gotten rid of the fingerprint sensor, which used to be built into the power button. The fact that this is what I'm left to nitpick about is a good sign for everything else. Asus seems to have quietly gotten rid of the fingerprint sensor. The design is quite similar to previous G14 models, with a few key changes. The anime matrix on the lid has 19% more mini LEDs than previous generation. The lights flash all kinds of customizable animated patterns, text messages, pictures, music equalizer effects, whatever else you want. They look pretty cool, even when the laptop is closed. You can even create a very cute virtual pet and play games with it. It's a legitimately cool thing that I wish didn't impact the G14's price so much. No fingerprint problems with the white model, but I can't speak for darker colors. It's also gotten slightly bigger. My test unit is 3.79 pounds. While one without the matrix lid is 3.64 pounds. Despite the increase in weight from its initial launch, the G14 remains a tad lighter than the Blade 14. It is thick as laptops go, but carrying it around and fitting it into a full backpack still wasn't a problem. Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 specs as reviewed: 14-inch IPS QHD 120Hz non-touch screen, 3 milliseconds, 500 nits, AMD R9 6900HS, 35W, 8 cores, AMD Radeon 6800F, 32GB dual-channeled DDR5 4800 MHz, 1TB M.2 NVMe PCIe 4.0 SSD, Windows Hello IR webcam, Wire 6E 802.11 1x2x2, 76W battery, 240W adapter. The all-aluminum body is as sturdy as ever. I battered it around in my full backpack for a few days, and it picked up no visible scratches or fingerprints. There's some flecks in the screen, but virtually none in the keyboard. The white finish is quite nice. This G14 also folds back a full 180 degrees, while last year's model could only do 110. It has the ErgoLift fold under hinge, as many Asus laptops do. It's a bit sharp, but not as uncomfortable as it can be on some thinner model. The white finish feels quite nice and is a step up from last year as well. The plasticky black bezels are really the only part of this G14 that doesn't quite look the $2,500 price. The change I'm most excited about is in the screen. It's finally 16:10. With a 91% screen-to-body ratio. It looks more modern than previous generations and allows for more multitasking screen space. It's also a great panel, covering 100% of the sRGB gamut and reaching an impressive 515 nits. That makes this one of the brightest gaming laptops I've ever reviewed. The lid LEDs turn off automatically when the G14 is unplugged. I love these discrete volume buttons on the keyboard deck. Elsewhere, the touchpad is 50% larger than last year's, and it's huge. I never once hit plastic while scrolling, and while my right hand was often resting on it, there were no palm rejection issues. The trackpad itself is quite smooth, with an easy click, and the G14's keyboard, always one of my favorite keyboards on the market, now has RGB backlighting. I wasn't blowing my normal typing speeds out of the water, but with 1.7 of travel, it's still a lot of fun to use. Finally, there's a webcam. It's compatible with Windows Hello, and it's actually fairly good, even in dim light. It delivered a clear and crisp picture with little noise and much more accurate colors than you usually see from laptop cameras. Speaking as someone who's on Zoom meetings all the time, this single feature has brought the G14 from a device I'd never consider to one that's I'd actually buy. I love this G14, but I have mixed feelings about the configuration I got. At the end of the day, Asus has fixed basically every problem I've had with the G14 in the past and has fine-tuned a number of other features. This would be a phenomenal buy for $1,599, and while I unfortunately can't say this for certain, I strongly suspect that you should wait for the lower tier model and pay $1,599. The G14's low price was a massive part of why so many reviewers have been singing its praises from the rooftops for the past 2 years. I imagine it's a huge part of why the laptop has been so notoriously difficult to buy. But the 2022 G14 I've been sent is in a different category. It's a luxury product, and that changes the calculus and the potential audience significantly. The G14 is no longer the value champ it once was. The long and short of it is, you can get a G15 for way less. If you'd prefer a 14-incher, you can get a Blade 14 for way less. While these have 16:9 screens, less RAM, and no virtual pets, they're better in the area that's most important in a gaming laptop: frame rates in GPU-intensive games. If you want the 1610 and the pretty lights, you might also consider the Zephyrus M16. It doesn't offer quite as much in terms of raw graphics power, but it came quite close on the titles tested here, and it's currently available for literally $1,000 less. This high-end G14 is really in the Blade 15 Advanced's price category, and that's a tougher class than it's occupied in the past. The G14 has a nearly flawless chassis and a powerful CPU that may be worth $1,599. But you shouldn't spend $2,500 to earn that price tag. It needs to bring better performance. Agree to continue. Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. Every smart device now requires you to agree to a series of terms and conditions before you can use it. Contracts that no one actually reads. It's impossible for us to read and analyze every single one of these agreements, but we started counting exactly how many times you have to hit agree to use devices when we review them, since these are agreements most people don't read and definitely can't negotiate. As with other Windows computers, the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 presents you with multiple things to agree to or decline upon setup. The mandatory policies for which an agreement is required are a request for your region and keyboard layout, Microsoft software license terms, and Asus notice. In addition, there is a slew of optional things to agree to: connect to Wi-Fi network, sign in with a Microsoft account, device privacy settings, Find My Device, inking and typing, advertising ID, location, diagnostic data, tailored experiences. Allow Microsoft to collect information to let Cortana provide personalized experiences and relevant suggestions. Provide your name, region, and email address to save to your device and autofill in the Asus member registration form in the My Asus app. Use your provided name, region, and email address to register for a McAfee account and receive emails of promotions, subscription, and security news from McAfee. That's 4 mandatory agreements and 11 optional ones.